Welcome to episode 11 of the Scott Allen CreatiVLOG. This is Jeff Terpstra. I am Jason Brewer. We are the hosts of this CreatiVLOG. I am so glad that you are here with us today on this episode. We've been discussing research and the struggles of trying to find the right message and what do you do with that and how do you conduct research. And so the question for today's episode is, what are you looking for in the research?
Well, this is the critical question, obviously, and marketers always think about how are we different from each other, and we really need to understand that. I need to understand how I'm different than my 21-year-old daughter if I'm going to communicate with her. Obviously, how are we different is the demographics. You know, what race am I? What income do I have? Where do I live? What is my education? What is my background? It's all those demographics and things outwardly that we see how we're different from each other. And that's, again, very important, especially as you're trying to reach multiple generations of potential donors and people who might want to invest in your nonprofit. You need to be asking that question. But I feel like an equally important question is, how are we alike? And in our journey to try to help nonprofits bridge multi-million-dollar investors and donors with the journey of a mom who's in homelessness, the demographics, outwardly, they're not alike at all, but yet they're both alike as mothers, right? Each of them have had the experience of what it's like to be a mother and care for your children. So that's kind of where we're going with the question of how are we alike? Yeah.
So that's what you're looking for and the research, but what aspects, how do you approach it? How do you conduct this research in order to find some of those similarities or the heartbeat that can be communicated to the rest of the world?
Yeah, I want to dedicate our next episode to like the research process and how we conduct research. But I first want to share with you some really beautiful, insightful things that we've learned in our journey. The first one is, first of all, we look outside of ourselves to find out what other people are saying and doing, even beyond the nonprofit space when we're trying to solve nonprofit problems. And so one of the first things that we discovered probably over 10 years ago, nonprofits would often lead with, we're going to tell about our programming, we're going to tell about what we do. And we looked at corporations who through the decades had amazing, powerful campaigns that engaged their consumers into millions of dollars worth of purchasing product because the consumer identified with a belief, not necessarily with the product first of all. And you see that in Nike's Just Do It, you see it in Apple's Think Different. They were portraying their heart. They were leading with their heart. And if a corporation does it, how much more should a nonprofit do that? So you're first looking for your why, your belief, your heart. And when the heart attracts us, your heart, Jason, attracts me to you. And, our long-term friendships are because we have a similar heart, a similar passion, similar values. And so we want the nonprofit to lead their brand with that belief statement that will attract others who also believe the same. So that's the first thing that you're looking for.
The why.
The why.
What's the second thing?
The second thing is what I learned from my son Jonathan when he was going to film school. And I was working on a Habitat Capital campaign. It was a $6 million campaign to engage the community. And Jonathan came next to me at my desk, and he had just come home from a class at Compass, and he said, "Dad, you know about the hero's journey?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Well, you should. You're doing nonprofit work." He said, "Well, they taught us today that in Hollywood there's a hero's journey, and if a film does not have that hero's journey, it probably won't become a blockbuster, whether it's a romantic comedy, a Marvel action film, no matter what the genre is, if there isn't a hero that we're attracted to, that film may tank." So writers in Hollywood understand the hero's journey, and basically you have a human that we identify with in their journey, and they face a struggle that they are reluctant to even go into that struggle because it's such a challenge. It seems overwhelming. But they take that step of, I'm going to go into that struggle. Like you see this perfectly shown in The Gladiator, where he reluctantly went into his life calling after his daughter and son were killed. And then throughout that hero's journey, you're seeing not only the battles they're facing outside or the challenges, but you're seeing an internal transformation of that hero. And you identify with that. My favorite film in high school was Rocky, and this is the time before you had, streaming and all that stuff. So if you wanted to see a movie, I went 4 times to see Rocky because I wanted to be so badly like Rocky. But that's it. He drew my heart into his story, and I identified with his story. So the hero's journey is really important. And you see almost a perfect overlay of a person entering, struggling with homelessness, for example. They didn't enter that journey willingly, wantingly. They were forced into that through situations. So they enter that journey, and inside is that internal transformation. And the hero faces challenges that they cannot overcome on their own. They need someone to come alongside of them with resources, insight, something to help them win the day when they fight that battle. And for the nonprofit, that is who the nonprofit is. The client is still the hero. The nonprofit comes alongside and helps them win the day. And so when you overlay, in your storytelling as a nonprofit, that hero's journey is the narrative that you want to tell.
And what's interesting is sometimes we can get the hero wrong.
Yes.
When we may be familiar with the hero's journey, or we may be able to recognize, and then we start to imply that we are the hero as the nonprofit, and that is not always the case, right?
Yeah,
From what you found.
I was speaking in front of 20 staff members for a nonprofit who help families out of homelessness, and they moaned when they found out that they weren't the hero. Because, it does make sense. Like, I rescue the day, I save the day.
Right. We want to be the hero.
We want to be the hero. The center of your story is the people that you serve. So there was one more piece, and for years I did not understand this piece. I got the why, I got the who, but I was missing something else. I knew there was some third piece, and I didn't know what it was. And we were doing a project where I was researching some of the most famous speeches of all time, especially those who were social change agents or political leaders, whether it was Abraham Lincoln or Winston Churchill, all these famous speeches. And we were trying to find, how do you attract thousands, even millions, to join you in a cause worth fighting for? And I was so struck with Bobby Kennedy's speech after Martin Luther King was killed. And part of the speech was, he said, we should perhaps remember, if only for a time, that those who live among us are our brothers, that we all share the same short moment of life, that they seek, as do we, to live out their life with purpose and happiness. And connecting that speech with what Martin Luther King Jr. said when he said, I have a dream, and then he painted a picture of that dream. And his dream was that his daughter could play in the playground with a white girl, and they wouldn't judge either one by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And in Martin Luther King's speech, he paints these vignettes of what his dream of what the world should be, and how to achieve it, he said, was through love and forgiveness, not through hate and violence. And so, as a nonprofit, that's the third piece. It's how do we change the world together? So you attract with your belief, you have empathy with your hero, and you engage people with casting a vision for your dream of how you can change the world together.
And when it's done right, just like Martin Luther King, he was inviting people into that dream and to capture the essence of that dream and to live that dream out. And that, as a nonprofit, as somebody who has a cause that you're passionate about, you are wanting to invite people into that dream and to be a part of it, to make a larger impact, a greater difference in the world around you. And so you have these different aspects of research and why it's so important to get the message right, and why it's important to just do the hard work and put the time in to figure out what that heart is, or what that message is that is clear, so that when you communicate it to others, they start to resonate and start to be drawn to that dream or that cause or that movement. So thank you for joining us today. And your passion is our inspiration. And it really is. And thank you again.